All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is the Leadership Conversation Podcast, and today I have a special guest. His name is Jermaine Andrews. Jermaine is the husband of my wife's best friend, Hope. Jermaine, why don't you introduce yourself?
Again, I'm Jermaine Andrews, and me and Derek know each other through our wives. I was in the Navy for about 10 years. I was on subs. And then when I got out of the Navy, I moved to South Carolina for work. While in the Navy, I was a machinist mate, but for submarines, called the A gang, I essentially operate and maintain different bunch of different equipment, pumps, motors, air compressors, oxygen generators, diesel. We kind of maintain the hydraulic power plant on the submarine and the air systems on the submarine and the refrigeration systems on the submarine and most of the atmospheric equipment.
Man, that's almost similar to what we do in the Army. I know we kind of maintain a lot of equipment. So I've always heard this running joke between like the Army and different branches of the military, Air Force, Navy, things like that. But I just want to say, man, I appreciate you for joining us today. And during this session, I guess we're going to talk about your time in the military and you being a husband and a father. And as you know, the podcast is called the Leadership Conversation Podcast. So most of our subjects will be covered about leadership. With that being said, is there any way you can share just a little bit more about what you did in the Navy and how it transitioned you to this civilian life that you live now?
Yeah, well, it's kind of odd how I played out doing what I do now. It kind of almost was kind of directly led right into it. Like I said, I was a machinist man. We maintained and operated a bunch of different equipment. And what I initially started doing when I first started with the company, it was SC&G at the time, and now it's work Dominion. I worked at a coal-fired power plant, and I walked around and started and maintained equipment.
Hmm.
So in the Navy, one of my primary jobs was AOW, auxiliary man of the watch, and a machinery watch, and that's exactly what I do now. Almost, I walk around, make sure equipment's not running too hot, it's got oil in it. If we got cooling water, the cooling water is working fine. And when I went and walked around for my interview, and they were trying to explain to me certain things, I was like, oh wow, this is just like being on a boat, but it's on a bigger scale. I know what a heat exchanger is. I understand where boiling water makes steam to turn the turbine to make power.
Yeah.
So it was actually unintentional. I didn't really seek out to be in the power industry, but it kind of just fell right into it, and it worked out pretty good. Right in line.
So it was a pretty smooth transition.
Yes, it was. It was.
I think a lot of service members, like especially when they retire or get out unintentionally, they are kind of worried about how their military skills will transition over to their civilian skills. Is there anything else that you felt like that you wanted to do besides what you're doing now?
No, I only did 10 years.
Mm.
I did feel pretty lost when I got out. I was like, I don't know what my skill set. I can't go work at a normal like auto garage and be a mechanic because I really don't know too much about small engines.
Right.
I guess maybe I could be a diesel tech somewhere, but I wouldn't even know where to start. And so I was for the first, few months of me getting out. I really didn't have a plan. I was pretty young and immature at the time,
Hmm.
and I, by the grace of God, my friends were already working for the company, and they said, "Hey, why don't you try to work with us at power plant?" And I said, "Yeah, well, why not?"
Yeah.
And it lined up.
That's what's up. I know it's always good. I'm not saying that's why you got the job, but I know it's always good to know people that are working in a particular industry and they know you from your time in the military. They know your work ethic. They know who you are as a person or somewhere. I mean, if you say you spent 10 years in the military, then I'm pretty sure someone has a general idea of it, at least the type of person that you are after 10 years. So, I mean, that would make a lot of sense. So let me ask you this: while we on the topic of military and service, as you know, I explained to you before, I had a couple of civilian jobs, and I think that civilians have a particular image of how leadership is supposed to be in the military. But I would love to hear on your perspective of what leadership is. Is there any way you can share what you feel like the biggest misconception of leadership is now that you work a civilian job and you spent about a decade in the Navy?
Yeah, I believe for me, I think the misconception comes from, I guess, movies and TV, what people
Hmm.
see, you know,
What
and
people do what now?
what they watch on movies and TV, the leadership
Uh-huh.
they see on TV, they think
Hmm.
that's the military really is like. When, for me, I believe it's almost one and the same. It's all about characteristics of the individual on how a
Really?
leader actually leads. Yes, so now I've been out longer than I've been in, and I've
Hmm.
had several leaders, with this company. But even before this long time, in the very beginning, I quickly realized, oh, this is the exact same thing. I mean,
Hmm.
you're going to have leaders that lead from the front, you got leaders that lead from the side, and you have leaders that lead from the back. And the only thing that's different is, we're not serving the country, we're serving this company now. That's all.
Right. That's interesting because a lot of people that I talk to feel like the military is this organization, or it was at one point in time, this organization where people follow orders blindly. Like you tell them what to do and they just do it. Right. And I went to a course called Master Leader course. It's the course that you essentially take if you want to become a master sergeant. And one of the things that they explain in the course is that, as time changes, the military has to change too, right? I know people think that the army is like this rigid organization, and to some extent it is. But I give you a prime example. If I can't tell a soldier now, hey, I need you to go move that trash can from this side of the building to the other side of the building, right? If I said it, 15, 20 years ago, the answer might have been Rogers Hart, and they'll just take off and they'll do it. But now I think it's different, because a lot of people want to know why. And I think that has a lot to do with like the society that we live in. You want to know the so what of things. And if I say to a soldier, hey, I need you to go move that trash can or that dumpster rather from this side of the building to the other side of the building. And the reason why I want you to do it is because they're coming to repave this parking lot today, and this side of the building needs to be clean. Right. So what I've learned from my time in the military, as far as leadership is concerned, when you give people a clear guidance and clear direction, clear expectation, then they can take that and they can make better decisions. And it also allows them themselves to be better leaders, if that makes sense. You know
That
what I
makes
mean?
sense. Yeah. You give them
Yeah.
actual purpose instead of just an order.
Hmm.
And a lot
Which
of
I
people,
think a lot.
yeah, a lot of people benefit from that. They don't
Hmm.
want
Yeah.
to do as they're told.
Because I do think that the ultimate goal of a leader is to watch anybody that's your subordinate grow. Like somebody has to take your place one day, right? And I think that the ultimate goal is to watch that person grow.
That's true. I agree
All
with
right.
that.
All right. So I know that you spent time in the military. You got, connections and belonging. Sometimes you found what they call like your people. I know when I joined the army and I went to Georgia and Texas and California, I had almost like an instant bond with people because I think we were all, striving for a common goal, if that makes sense. Do you feel like now that you're in a civilian role, apart from the Navy, that you found like your people?
Now, yes. Yes. Well, I cheated a little. I cheated a little bit because, like you said, I found those people back in early 2000, and those are the same handful of people that are still actually here in South Carolina. So when I
Yeah.
moved to South Carolina, they're already here. So I already felt
Ah.
like I was, here. And I did visit here before I actually moved when I was stationed in Virginia. I was stationed off
Mhm.
of my friend Dusty would come because he's from Lexington. He'd
Mhm.
come visit his mom, and I would just drive down from Virginia to see them. And I'm sure when I finally got out and I moved back down here, it didn't take but a few months. I was like, yeah, this is where I need to be. This is a good base for me to be. I got friends. I'm getting more friends. I got a good job. I'm quick access to go see my dad in Brooklyn. I'm a family in Florida. A little bit longer
Mm.
in Washington, but at least now I'm on the mainland. I'm not in Hawaii because that's originally what I was going to do was stay in Hawaii. But I
Mhm.
realized staying in Hawaii, I'd never seen family. I mean, it's just you'd have a lot more. You need more resources just to live in Hawaii to be able to get off the island,
Yeah.
quick and have people to come. So yeah, I definitely found my people here. Obviously I found my wife and my daughter now, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely where I need to be.
Do you think that that was a determining factor in you wanting to like just settle down in South Carolina?
Oh no, that's a good question. Most of my life I've moved around, so it's very easy for me to move. Even before the Navy, I moved around a lot as a kid, and so moving when I got to the Navy, some people had problems, with going on deployment and being away from, their family and stuff, where it
Yeah.
really didn't affect me as much. So I can't definitively answer that if that was a
Yeah.
definitive answer, but yeah.
I know Miranda and I talk often about where we're going to go after I retire. And as I shared with you before, that, I have this internship with IBM starting next week. And one of 3 states she's hoping to be in, but hopefully it'll be a state we can actually like settle down and grow. And just like you, I'm used to moving, but I've been moving around so much where you go to an area, you meet people, you start getting along really well, and then all of a sudden it's time for you to leave. But I think the great thing about that is you still have those connections with those people as you spread your wings. But I would love to just, settle down and call the place my home, pick the kids up, go volunteer at the local school, coach like
Right.
a summer basketball league or something like that. That's something that I want to do. And I don't think people outside of the military understand that until they actually are forced to like leave a specific area. So it's good and bad. You get to see different places, but you still want that sense of belonging. So
Yes, when I did finally decide to move here, and I'd say it was about a year, I told myself I'm not moving anywhere else. This is it.
yeah,
That-
yeah,
I'm done moving. I mean, I moved, like I said, I moved my entire life, so I'm not moving anywhere else.
yeah.
I'm not taking a job. Like, say halfway through my career with this company, a project failed, and then I semi got let go. Not really. I ended up finding a job within the company. And, there were opportunities to go work somewhere else, but, overseas or another state. And I was like, nah, I don't think I was doing it. It all happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but it all happened, I guess, 3 months. It happened in July, and I was getting married in October. And I think, yeah, we closed on the house in December. I got let go in July, and then we're getting married in October. So I
Hmm.
a lot to try to figure out in a very short period of time. But one thing I knew I did not want to do was leave. I didn't want to go anywhere else.
Yeah. I know
Definitely.
for I know for the most part for this area, we like the fact that it is a slower pace. So we live in like an area called McAllen, and as I explained to you, it's a little border town, but the crime here is not super bad. It's crime everywhere, but it's not super bad. But I don't feel like it's where I belong, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So
That makes sense. Yeah, I get it.
yeah. I'm curious to ask you this, man. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if I shared this with you before, but I almost joined the Navy, right?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember coming out of high school, I went with the recruiter. We took the ASVAB test. I scored good enough to pass, but unlike most people that join the military, of course my job in the military was a mechanic. And I was like, oh, I just like to fix stuff. I'm real good with my hands. I've been working on stuff since I was like 10, 12 years old. And I wanted something that would transition to me when I got out. But the job they offered me was, I don't know, something totally different. I can't remember what the job was. And the guy kept calling, calling, calling. And I decided to join the Army instead. And I can share later why I decided to join the Army. But I remember looking at other branches after I got in, especially the Air Force, right? Because I think them jokers got it like, I'm not gonna say easy, but they have like it's called the luxury branch, where
Yeah,
their field environment is a hotel. So
right.
I'm just curious, from one Army guy to a Navy guy, did you ever think about joining any type of or any other branch? And if so, what was like the appeal? Like what attracted you to another branch, even if you thought about it?
I never really thought about it. So me joining in the Navy, essentially a random choice, really, and fluke. Because to answer your question, the only other branch I probably would have maybe joined was the Marines, and it's really only because of the uniform. I mean,
Right.
it's just slick.
That
Everybody
look,
knows
they do have some dope uniforms,
they
man.
got those uniforms. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
But I joined the Navy because I was in ROTC. I lived in Texas during like middle school, and I was in middle school, junior high school, and I was in Army ROTC. And then when we moved from Texas to Washington State, they didn't have an Army ROTC up there, they had Navy. So I just,
Mm,
whatever, I just joined the Navy ROTC because I just didn't want to do PE and kind of for PE credit. 'Cause I hated PE.
yeah.
I just thought PE was dumb.
Yeah.
So all of that went down. I did, I guess 2.5 years of Navy ROTC and didn't really think about it. And towards the end of the school year or my senior year, I was like, what am I gonna do? I don't really know what I'm gonna do when I get out.
Yeah.
And of course, recruiters are there and they pitch whatever.
Hmm.
And took a placement test or I think it was some sort of test to get onto the shipyard. Bombed that, didn't even get considered for that job.
Yeah.
But, well, I at that age, I grew up a little bit about life things early in life, like at
Yeah.
16, 17 years old. And one thing I knew I couldn't do was I couldn't stay in Washington because I knew I wouldn't do anything. I would just I would be a bump on the log. I'd go work at Burger King as a cashier forever. I knew I wouldn't
Yeah.
try to push myself. And I didn't like school, so I couldn't go to college. I said, oh, so join the Navy. I mean, why not? I mean,
Yeah.
what else you got to do? So
Yeah.
I went and signed up. Me being in the sub force was completely not really random. They just kind of peddled on how great it was. And they said, hey, we'll give you $4,000 for joining. And I said, $4,000 to, at the time, a 17-year-old. I was like, yeah, I'll do
Yeah.
that.
Same here.
Yeah. So it all was somewhat random.
It was essentially a great decision, though, right? Because you got
Yes.
friends and
Yes, it was the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. And
yeah,
all the people, like my brother was in the army, so you would think I would have a, an inkling to go towards the army,
yeah,
but it just no other branch ever really was like, yeah, I think I want to do that.
yeah.
Yeah, no.
I'm gonna tell you like, and I'll share real quick why I essentially joined the army. So when I was going to the Navy, like I was like you, I had no interest in going to school. I knew I was smart, but I think I was a lazy kid mentally, right? And I tell my son this all the time. I was
Right.
like, bro, I know you because I was just like you. But I played basketball in high school. I was like good. I wasn't like great, but I was good. I was good enough to get scholarships. But at the time, in order for you to go to school, you had to take the test called the ACT, and I didn't take it. My coaches started telling me to take it around my junior year because they was like, hey, Ivor, you got a college that's looking at you. You just start taking tests. They were mostly like swag colleges. I think Jackson State, Alcorn, Tougaloo, Mississippi Valley State, Xavier of New Orleans actually gave me a holler. And I decided to go to Mississippi Valley State during my senior year. And if you know about Mississippi Valley State, it's like Jared Rice went there, Willie Todd, people like that.
Okay.
And we graduated high school on June the 6th, and I was in a car accident around June 25th or 26th, something like that, right? But the tryouts were in July. And the coach at the time told me to come down and try out, and he would give me he would redshirt me my first year, meaning I would have 5 years of eligibility, but I would graduate in 4. So I would be a fifth year senior, and I
Right.
wouldn't do anything but play basketball my last year. And I was like, oh, I'm cool with that. But when I called him and I told him that I hurt my knee, it wasn't damage beyond repair. But when I called him and I told him that I hurt my knee, he essentially told me I was damaged goods. And I was 18 years old, right? It like broke
Wow.
my heart. I thought I was going to play basketball for the rest of my life. So I ended up going to junior college right down the road from Mississippi Valley State. It was in Sunflower, Mississippi. It's called Mississippi Delta Community College. I went out there and I tried to play basketball. I was at basketball practice and I was like killing this dude that was guarding me, right? But I guess the coach just didn't have any more room left on the team. So I moved back to Jackson, dropped out of college, moved back to Jackson, got my own apartment, started working at Walmart as an overnight stalker. And my first paycheck, I wanted to go get these fresh shoes, man. So then I passed by the recruiter office because it was in the mall, the Metro Center Mall at the time. And as I passed by the office, I see this huge basketball trophy in the office, right? It was like, I swear, man, it was like at least 6 feet tall. So I walked in and I was like, hey, I wanted to know what the Army has to offer me. And I was like, oh, what do you like to do? And I was like, oh, I just like playing basketball. And then they were like, the Army has a basketball team, right, son? And I was like, word? There's like, yeah, you can travel the world and get paid to play basketball. You can go to all these different countries and you can meet new people. And I was like, man, that's what's up. I said, that's all I want to do. And at the time I was 19, I was like, I can do that. And I signed up quick. I got the job as a mechanic, which I liked. And I was all in my training, like my basic training in AIT. I don't know what they call it for the Navy, but it was AIT for us. And I started asking the drill sergeant, like, hey, when is basketball tryouts? He was like, when is what? I was like, when is basketball tryouts? And he was like, bro, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh man, I'm supposed to be joining the Army to play basketball. He was like, no, you can't play basketball. And I was like, he got me. But when I did make the All Army team, but I made it when I was deployed. He didn't lie, but he stressed the truth. You got paid to play basketball, but it was a regular Army pay.
Right.
You traveled, but it was when you went TDY, right? So he didn't necessarily lie. I
Right.
tell people, I share this story with like multiple soldiers and civilians, but this is the reason why I joined the Army, because I thought I could play basketball, like, and that was
Wow.
it. Yeah, yeah.
I know
But
that.
I'm essentially at the end of my career now, and I'm starting to transition out. But I don't regret the things that I've did in the Army, the people that I've met, the friendships that I've created. Me and Marina can tell you there's not a the reason why Marina knows hope is because of the military. The reason why I know Marina is because of the military. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it has that strong. But when it came to transitioning out, that was one of the things that I kind of like feared. But I do want to ask you, speaking of transitioning out, everybody knows it's a big, big change. What was the hardest part of transitioning out for you?
For me personally, it was the fear of the unknown.
Mm,
A lot of the people that I knew that transitioned out was they already had things lined up. Like I said before, I was pretty young and immature at the time when I got out. I didn't really have my head on straight. But, like some of my friends, I mean, they already had a job before they even actually got out. I mean, they were working while they were on terminal leave kind of stuff. They were doing interviews. I didn't do any of that. I had this childish dream of, I'm just going to get out, get paid to go to college, and then get some, rinky-dink job to,
yeah,
meet the gap a little bit and just have
yeah,
fun. Yeah, no, none of that. That quickly came to a screeching halt. But I just say the uncertainty was the only thing that kind of really got me. And if it wasn't for my friends then to back me up, I really don't know where I would have been. I
yeah.
really don't.
Yeah. I only shared this with my family and maybe a couple other people, but maybe last year sometime, I dropped my retirement package because, like, you know what, man, they said 24 years in the military is enough. And I was like, I think part of your role, I feel like part of your role as a man is you have to protect and provide, right? And I've been in the military for 2 decades. And when you get out, you're like, well, I'm worried about how my military skills are going to transition to my civilian side. And I remember one day in my office, I was sitting down filling out paperwork, and I was actually looking for like jobs that would transition over. I was like Googling, using Chat GPT AI to like help me write resumes, and I started
Yeah.
freaking out and stood up and walked out of my office, and I was telling my coworkers, I was like, man, my chest is hurting. They was like, you good? And I was like, yeah, it just feels funny, like I can't breathe. And they was like, you're probably having a heart attack. And I was like, are you sure? I feel fine. Like, and it was like, oh, you just say your chest is hurting. I was like, yeah, I just feel funny. That's like, it's so hard for you to breathe. And I was like, yeah. That's like, oh, you're having a heart attack. We're going to call the ambulance. And one of my coworkers was like, it's going to take forever. I'll just take you. So they took me to the hospital. They started doing all these tests, and they did blood work, and they did an EKG machine. And they was like, yeah, man, you're fine. And they was like, you know what you had? And I was like, what? They was like, you had an anxiety attack.
Yep.
I was like, me? And they were
Yeah.
like, yeah, you. And I was like, why do you think I had an anxiety attack? And then they hooked me up with counseling, and we were talking, and she was like, oh, I think you had one because of your transition out. She said, I think that you're anticipating something, bigger than what it is. And essentially it's something called a snowball effect, right? And I'll tell you how a snowball effect works. It's similar to like a college student who gets a bad grade on a paper. The first thought is, oh, I got this bad grade. And since I got this bad grade, I'm going to fail the class. If I fail the class, then I won't get my degree. If I don't get my degree, then I won't graduate. If I don't graduate, then I won't get a job. If I don't get a job, then I'll just be poor and homeless for the rest of my life, right?
Yep.
That's snowballing. When the simple answer to something like that is just take the test again. Because I think failure is a big part of people's life. And I know that me shifting from the military to civilian life, that initial thought was like really tough for me. And even though I'm still in, I started taking things more serious, like my college education and getting certifications and jumping on this internship, like I said a little while ago, that make the transition a lot easier. And then I get a lot of encouragement from Marina as well, say, Derek, you're gonna be fine. Like, there's no way you shouldn't make this amount, or I think you have a lot of skills to offer besides whatever. So I think that's always good.
Yeah, I recently went to a retirement ceremony in Colorado for one of my good friends, and he's out. Yeah, he's been out. Yeah, he's out now, and he's retired as a chief in the Navy. But
Mm-hmm.
he was kind of going through the same kind of deals, and I know him, and he's one of the smartest people I know. And even him was, kind of worried about even the people telling him like, "Hey, we need you back here where he was working. So once you become a civilian, we need you to come back and do the same thing, just as a civilian." And he was even then he was still worried that like, man, I hope I get this job. I was like, man, they
Yeah.
said that you could. I was there at the retirement center, but they want you to come back, and I don't think it's not if, it's when you can go
Yeah.
back. Your timeline might not meet theirs, but but it's even then, since it's still all worked out. I mean, he retired earlier this year, and I believe he's starting. If he hasn't already started, it'll probably be in a week or two or so.
Yeah. I just think there's a big part of who we are as men, like to protect and provide for your family. Because
Right.
you ever seen someone homeless, a family homeless on the side of the road?
Sadly, yes.
I don't think anybody ever looked at the woman and said it's a shame that she let her family come out here like this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well,
Nobody.
at least I didn't have that thought. I thought that
No.
was I didn't think that was good.
No one.
Well,
It's always placed on the man, because he's supposed to be, like you said, the provider and the protector of the family and the leader
yeah.
of the family.
Yeah. Well, speaking of family, do you feel like, well, I guess you would say you're transitioning out of the military, right? I know you are a husband and you are a father, and being a husband and a father brings different challenges, opportunities. Like you cannot convince me that there's no one more gangster than kids. Like straight up. Like you can tell a kid no, and they will look at you in your face and do exactly what you told them not to do.
Right.
That's just how gangster kids are.
Right.
But how do you feel like either your time in the military or your transition out of the military prepared you for being a husband or a father?
I guess I would say, from the things that I've learned in the Navy, well, a lot of the things now that I'm 40, I'm 42, yeah, about to be 42. I've realized that I didn't know back then in the Navy, but I realized that now, that the Navy taught me a lot of patience and grace and repetition. You
Yeah,
can't just expect someone to do something and know something one time and first time, especially someone that hasn't been on this earth for 4 years.
yeah,
So
that's
that's
true.
one of the things that I try to repeat to myself. And sometimes I tell Hope this, like, she's only been here, whatever age she was, and when she was 2 and she kept doing something, or 3, I was like, she's only been on this earth for 3 years. I
Yeah,
mean, she doesn't know.
yeah,
So
true.
we got to keep guiding her and guiding her and guiding her. And that, I just do subtle little things of repetition to get her to do it. Just like in the Navy, we had operating procedures, casualty procedures. We drilled, until it's second nature. We don't even think about it
Right.
anymore. We just do it. And some of the little things that I already seen little signs of it. She gets in the door and she, immediately I just call her, "Hey, Olivia." I said, "What are those?"
Yeah,
She said, "Those my shoes." She goes, she picks them up, she puts them on the stairs.
yeah,
But there's a whole bunch of other little things I'm trying to get her to keep doing. And school helps with that too. So I kind of take what they're doing at school, as far as, teaching them how to be a good kid, and reinforcing them at home. As civilian wise, there's not too much. It really all kind of comes from the Navy, poured into my civilian life, that everything
yeah,
just kind of reinforced. Navy core values: honor, courage, commitment. And I try to kind of lead my life by that. Being honorable is something that I hold very dear to me and to someone that I know and love.
yeah,
Uh, it's not a hard thing to do. The second one, courage, that's the harder one to do. It's having the courage to do the right thing, even though it's going to be difficult. A lot of people have struggled with that.
yeah,
Commitment is probably the second hardest thing to do. It's be committed to doing what you need to do to, as like a leader of my family, to provide for the family, and putting my needs to the side, and thinking about the end goal as far as commitment, like with my health and fitness. I don't want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I work 12-hour shift works. I don't want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go work out.
yeah,
But I also don't want to get off of work and then go work out, and that takes away time from my family.
yeah,
So I have to sacrifice a little bit of my time of sleep or whatever to be in better shape to be here for them in the long run.
yeah, yeah. Marina said that to me one day. She was like, and I do work out. I work out 2 or 3 times a week. And just like I was telling you before the call, I took up bike riding. Uh,
I noticed that.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's super far, but I know I'll do no less than 6 miles. I think just yesterday I did like almost 11. It was like 10.66 miles. And Marina was like, dang, that's far. And I was like, it wasn't far to me. Because I got guys that do like 70 miles in one trip.
Right.
Like
Yeah, I know.
that, like
That too. Yeah.
that's far to me. So I would always tell her, like, she would tell me, she tried to change my eating habits, like, oh, you shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't eat this. And I was like, oh, you're trying to change me, woman. And she explained to me one day, she was just like, look, bro, I love you, the kids love you. We want you around a long time. If you want to be around them, you have to make certain choices that's going to keep you healthier, to include not just working out, but eating healthier, doing specific things. I still get up early in the morning time. And I said that to say that there's a few traits that I would like to pass down to my son, who, as you know, is in the military now. And one of them is just, doing what you have to do. Because I have to tell him all the time, DJ, nobody gives a shit that you're tired. Just get it done.
Yeah.
Right? Successful is because they know repetition, right?
Right.
It's doing the same thing over and over every day. That's essentially how people learn. And I hope that out of all the traits that I have and that the military has taught me, the one trait that I hope to pass to my son is the one where he works hard, right? I hope that he does what he has to do with like no questions asked, right? Not, of course, not if it's like illegal or immoral, but I want him to do what he's supposed to do. And with that being said, I want to know, Olivia's what now, 4?
For you.
What do you like? What traits do you feel like you want to pass down to her that you've learned through your time in the Navy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just stealing yours, but that's 100% it. It doing your job, whatever that is. Started working for the company in August, and they had to do a year in review. So I was only working for the company for 4 months. So in December, they had to do a year in review with me, and I sat down with the operations manager at the time, and he said, "Yeah, we got to do this. And I know you only been here. We didn't really get to see much of you work and everything. Uh, I like to say I wish I had 13 more just like you." And that kind of threw me back. I was like, "I'm barely here. What do you mean?" He said,
Yeah.
"You show up to work on time, you do your job, and you don't complain." Like, okay, I get it. I mean, there's no extra effort to do your job. There's literally no extra effort to do your job, and that's probably one of the traits I'd like for her to carry on when she's in school. Just do what you're supposed to do. Do your studying. Do your homework. Do you make good grades on your tests. I'm not requiring you to come home with all A+s all the time. If your best effort gives you a C+, that's what you got. You can't give any more than you got. But if you know you got a little bit more in you, and you'll know, everybody knows.
Yeah.
If you had a little bit more, if you could have done a little bit more to
Yeah.
prepare yourself, then you could have done better. But if you don't, that's all you got. That's all you got. You can't
Yeah.
give what you don't got. And it'll take you far. And I learned that from one of my first mentors. I still talk to him to the day. He put that in me. He said, just do your job, and you'd be surprised how many people around you are not just doing the bare minimum.
Oh yeah.
That's all I've been doing ever since he told me that, and it's worked out very well.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you another question. I guess it's centered around leadership and your job now. Do you have people that work under you, or you supervise anybody, or are you just in an area by yourself?
I don't consider myself a leader or supervisor of any kind, but yes, I essentially do have some people because I sit in the control room operating power plant, and I have APOs or assistant plant operators that go out and do the checking. Like if I see something wrong on my screens, I'm like, "Hey, I need you to go check this," kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yes, I do have people underneath me a little bit.
So I know you know that civilian leadership and military leadership is different. On the military side, you have things that back you up essentially. I've never used my rank to ask anybody to do anything. But I think that on the military side, everybody knows where they are based on like your rank, your time in service, and what you know. But what I've noticed on the civilian side, a lot of times they don't really care about that, right? Not
Right.
all civilians, but a lot of them don't really care about that. Do you feel like your leadership style has changed since you've gotten out the military? And if it has or hasn't, tell me why you think it didn't.
For me, in my perspective, it has not changed. Again, I say I have a couple other supervisors that showed me this. That whenever you're in charge, because I did have some small leadership roles in the Navy, like I was a section leader for when we were in port, and one important thing that I always remembered was to understand like the cards you dealt. As you're dealt these individuals to do a certain task, whether it's just go to day-to-day operations or perform a specific task at work. You just have to understand the individual. It's hard if you're like a brand new leader and you don't really know the personalities, the capabilities of the people. But when you do, you know what they can do. And
Right.
I did that the short little supervision I had in the Navy, and I did the same thing the few times I did have some leadership roles outside of the Navy. And if you understand what you have and what they're able to do, you can do anything. It really
Nice.
doesn't matter. You just got to understand their limitations of what they can and can't do.
Right. So if you had, I read a book, man, who is it? It's by Jocko Willett and Leif Babin. And they essentially talk about leadership. And they talk about how everything, if you're the leader, is your fault, right?
Right.
Do you agree with that, or?
I agree with that.
I do too. Because I feel like as a person that's in charge, I feel like you're supposed to be able to teach those up under you, how to do things better. And if they don't know, then there should be areas for you to improve, like, or tell them that they need to improve on. So that makes sense. And another thing that I was looking at, one of my favorite, not met this guy, but I heard about him through one of my coworkers. And he told me I should look him up one day. So then I started looking at all his TED Talks. His name is Simon Sinek. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Mm-mm.
So Simon Sinek has this TED Talk where he's talking about how Navy SEALs trust people, right? So you have somebody who's really in shape, but the trust factor. So high and trust, right? Trust is all the way over here and high is up here. He said that he thought that in the Navy SEALs, you want somebody that's the high trust and high physical fitness. He was like, but that's not necessarily the case, because you may have somebody that's really in shape, like he can run 100 miles, but you can't trust him, right? And then you have somebody that you can trust, but he's not necessarily in the best shape of his life. I've heard that they go for someone in the middle, someone that they can trust, and someone that they can that's in really good physical shape. And I think the reason why he said people do that is because trust is a lot more important than someone being in shape. Like if you can get somebody in shape,
right?
But certain things like trust, like I don't think you can necessarily teach that.
No.
So I have to trust somebody to have my back, especially like in the combat zone or transition to civilian world. I have to trust that somebody's gonna do what they say they're gonna do when they say they're gonna do it. Marina will tell you this, man. One of my pet peeves is being late. I cannot stand being late. Like I just can't stand it. And even if I'm late myself, I will make sure that I text or call somebody and let them know, hey, like for instance, I was supposed to be on at 10:30, but I text you around 10:20. I was like, hey, give me 10 minutes, right? I just don't like being late. And I told her that I feel like, if I have somebody who's like late all the time, that's an employee, I don't feel like I can trust them. And she was like, why? And I was like, because I think it's so simple for you to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Like you can't be late on a consistent basis.
Yeah,
that's just one of my pet peeves.
What I've learned is that is definitely a military thing. If you're on time, you're late kind of deal. That was always hammered into us. If you're early, you're on time. And I'm the same way. I've learned to try to not hold it so hard. I was picking up Olivia from school to go get her hair done. I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking about how long it's going to get for me to get there. And appointment's at 4:30. And I'm like, let me text the lady. So I text her and said, hey, we might be a few minutes late. And I show up there right at 4:30, right? And I've done it a couple of times, and then she says, you can tell you're a military man, you're always worried about being late. It's like, oh, I mean, and the thing about the whole being late thing is about time. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, I'm in middle age now, so I'm all thinking about the future and how much time I have left. Time is a valuable resource. You cannot get it back.
I was gonna say you cannot get it back, man.
And there's no amount of money that ever bought time.
Nope.
It's so whenever I'm expecting someone to do something at a certain time and they're late, to me, slightly slap in the face that you don't care about my time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to waste anybody else's time. I never want to waste anybody's time. And the Navy definitely put that in me.
That's the big thing for me too. And I told Marina, like she would tell me this all the time. So my barber's notoriously late. But listen, my appointment is set up like at 12 o'clock, right? And if it's set up at 12 o'clock, I'm there at 12 o'clock. But he still has people in the chair. He's like, "Oh, my bad, bro. I'm just gonna finish him up real quick." Marina she was like, "I don't know why you show up on time, because he's just going to be late." And I was like, yeah. I said, I'm not worried about what he doing. I was like, I'm worried about what I doing. I said, what if I show up late one day and he don't have nobody in the chair?
Right.
And she was like, why do you want to be on time? I said, I feel like it's so disrespectful to somebody else if you tell them that you're going to be somewhere at a specific time and you show up late without calling or texting. I say it's so disrespectful.
Right.
And just like you said, time is one of those things you can't get back. And it's one of the things that I hold to that's my pet peeve, man.
Yeah. I mean, I even call, like, I had a chiropractor appointment and the traffic got thick. I was like, I called him up and said, hey, I think I'm going to be late. I'm like, oh, don't worry, 5 minutes, it's fine. I was like, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah,
I just don't like being late. I don't know. It's probably more likely just hammered in from the military. Like
yeah,
underweight at 0800. You better be there
yeah,
at 0700.
yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you this: now that you are like well into your civilian life, like you say, you've been out of the military longer than you were in. What is one piece of advice that you would give to anyone making that transition, or someone in a leadership role for personal growth, family, whatever the case is?
Preparation.
Ah,
Weird.
good.
How it go? Fail to plan to fail. Whatever
Yes.
kind of different way you'd like to say it. I've heard it many different ways. Like, again, I was immature at the time when I got out. I didn't plan. I didn't prepare very well. The only thing I did do that was good to prepare was I made a full copy of my medical record before I got out.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's only because they told me that at TAPS. Preparation. You have to prepare. It's not. I'm not trying to sound scary or anything, but it's a different world that you're about to be going into. No more guaranteed paychecks, no more guaranteed medical care. Nowhere, no one to tell you what to do, where to be, or you telling anybody where they need to be. It's now all on you to figure it out. So you need to prepare. Go look at all the resources they have as far as getting connected with the VA or any transition assistance programs with job fairs or whatnot. You haven't written a resume in for you 24 years. I mean, you even know
Yeah.
what it looks like anymore. If you even need to have to do that or whatever, you just have to. And there are plenty of reasons. I felt like when I was getting out, there was not. I had a bad shake getting out. I still kind of hold that little chip on my shoulder a little bit. They essentially, when I was getting out, they knew I wasn't staying, and I told them repeatedly I'm not staying in. They put me on a boat for like a year and a half, 2 years, and the boat moved from Virginia to Hawaii. So they said, "Oh, you're not staying in? Okay, well, you're doing
Yeah.
taps now." I said, "I'm sorry." He said, "You're doing your transition to get out 2 years before you get out. So you got to do
Yeah.
it here in Virginia, and we're going to do your final move now here in Virginia." So they packed up all my stuff and they said, "We're going to hold it into storage until 2 years later you get out. So you go ahead and go to Hawaii and finish that off, and then they'll put your stuff wherever you want it." I was like, "Well, that kind of sucks."
That's crazy.
Yeah, but again, biggest thing is prepare. Have a plan. Have a actual goal. Don't just think you're gonna step out and just go into another job. Start applying for those jobs now. Let them know your situation or whatever you need to do.
Well, I tell you what, brother, that sounds like a sound bite to end this podcast, man. And I just want to say, from one soon to be veteran to another, man, I do appreciate your service. Glad I didn't join the Navy though. Those beds are really small on that ship, man. And
Very, very smaller on the snow.
me being 6'5", I wouldn't think I would have lasted that long.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I do appreciate your time, man. And, hoping to do this again soon. Maybe we'll see you guys for a holiday coming up. Maybe we'll see you all the time if, I do get a job in South Carolina.
that's right. Well, yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on your podcast. And whenever I do decide to finally do mine, I'll I'll hit you up and maybe you can do mine.
For sure, man.